Hi, Wheatland family. So glad to be coming to you today in the middle of this week. And one of the things that I've been hoping to accomplish with these videos is to connect you more closely to some of our leadership, some of our lay volunteers who play important roles in our life together. And today I'm going to continue that by inviting Kristen Zimmerman, who is our Director of Children's Ministries, into a conversation that we've been hoping to have for a couple of weeks to reach out to you as parents and families. So today it finally worked out, so I'm so glad to have her coming to join in this conversation. Let me invite her into our time together. Hi, Kristen, welcome.
Good morning, Luke.
We're so glad to have you join our conversation today. Thanks for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I would guess probably that most people at Wheatland know who you are, but there are probably some who have seen you around or just know that you're the children's ministry director, but don't actually know you incredibly well because either they're new to the congregation or they don't have kids in sort of the children's ministry orbit. I thought I'd ask you to take a moment to tell us a little bit about your family, how long you guys have been at Wheatland, and then maybe what drew you to the position that you have here on staff now as Director of Children's Ministry.
Sure. My husband, Dane, and I have 3 kids. Sabine is 12, Beck is 7, and Ansel is 4. And I think we started coming to Wheatland maybe 3 months before you and Terry Lynn did.
I think that's right.
It was right about the same time.
Yeah. So
just in time for a new pastor.
Right. And that's a decade or so, right? 2009?
I think so. Yeah.
Good.
So we're marking a decade. And my interest in children's ministry here grew out of my own family and thinking about my interest in my own children's faith development. And I have a background in program development. And when the opportunity for a children's ministry director came available, I thought, oh, this would be a neat way to plug in what I know about growing a program and connect it with what I desired and hoped for in the supports and ways that the church can come around families here at Wheatland and join with them in their children's faith formation.
Yeah, that's fantastic because I know you worked for a number of years here in Lancaster for Mennonite Central Committee doing that very thing. So that's exciting.
Yeah, so it's fun to bring it home to our very own church congregation.
Yeah. Well, we're glad you're here doing that. And I want to start by saying what I'm hearing is that kids are really loving our live stream service. The reports that I'm hearing is that they're deeply engaged, especially in the sermon time. They're really locked in and tracking with the sermons on live stream.
Copious note-taking.
Yes, exactly. No, I'm being silly, obviously, but what are some of the challenges that maybe that you're facing in your own family? I know our family's facing them. In fact, I came home Sunday from church and Basil said, I saw you on TV. So like he's glimpsing me, but I think the other half of the time, he's probably watching Wild Kratts or something during the sermon. But tell me a little bit about the challenges your kids are facing and maybe what you're hearing from other parents along those lines.
Sure. I know a few of our families are familiar with the Parenting in the Pew book, and I would just say that parenting on the couch is a whole new ballgame.
Right.
Like for me, for you, I think it's across the boards, and that gets more complicated when you have a spread of children's ages like Dane and I do, like many of us do, where one solution doesn't fit everybody.
Sure.
So yeah, Wild Kratts it is during sermon time. But I think, I know for our family, we've tried to keep together during the order of worship, just to keep our kids used to that rhythm for worship. And I will make a confession. The part that we struggle with the most is the singing. We, the Zimmermans, are awful at singing and can't hold a tune worth anything. But there we are, limping along in
I wish
our
we had a
living room.
clip that we could play of you all singing on Sundays.
No, please. It would be bad, really bad. And I'm the worst offender. So, but we have kept together during that worship order time, and then use the coloring pages or children's bulletins to sit the boys down close to us and just tell them, now you be quiet while Pastor Luke talks,
Right.
and busy your hands here. Now, I know that works for us to varying degrees. I have talked with other friends about how with their range of kids, younger, maybe a different spread of ages, they're thinking about breaking up the sermon, the word time, and just taking that in as adults, and doing something else with their children for that word input or proclamation of the word time. I think we have to be really generous and compassionate with all of our families as we adjust to coping with what is a new service. There's a lot of the familiar old, but it's still a different format, and doing it in your living room by yourselves brings different dimensions to it. And so we can't use the same or have the same expectations that we do when we're gathered together.
Yeah, I've been thinking, as I was thinking about talking to you about this, and then of course talking to Terry Lynn about our own particular family. I still have yet to experience a live stream worship except in the Augustine room. So in a couple of weeks, I think I'm going to get the opportunity. But I was thinking it's probably challenging because kids, when they're in front of the screen, are used to that screen speaking directly to them in a sense. It's a cartoon, it's something they wanted to watch, it's their favorite YouTube, whatever. But so I'm sure that those challenges exist at Sunday morning at 10:45 for our parents.
Sure, and this isn't specific to live streams, but in our Sunday school curriculum that we used this last year, we talk about different types of smarts for different learners. And, you know, some learn really well through hearing, some learn really well through doing, reading is another way of, and logic, different things like that. And when you narrow it to basically an auditory presentation, that is harder for some kids that have different strengths.
Sure. Well, I think one of the things that you and I have talked about in the last couple of weeks as we've thought about resourcing our Wheatland kids is that the internet and social media right now are teeming with all sorts of advice and opportunities and information with what to do with kids who are home now, and lots of advice and stuff for parents. And with all that material available, and a lot of it I think is probably really helpful stuff. There's some really good things out there. How are you focusing on what you are offering to our Wheatland families that won't be overwhelming to them, just another thing in the midst of all the other things, but also something that might hopefully, you know, meet their needs for, especially as we talk about the challenge of worship on a couch?
Yeah. I like that. It was a challenge of worship on a couch. One of the things that I kind of spelled out in an earlier email to parents of children, I think it was 0 to 15, something like that, was that here at Wheatland, I had really felt that as we look to support our families and they're in these times and during this worship, that we couldn't be just cranking out a whole bunch of different resources. As you said, there's a lot of that available. And I think most of our congregants are tapped into ones that they will use. I felt that the priorities for what Wheatland could provide and resource is really twofold. One is around worship and worship training, and the other is around connection.
Okay.
And so, for example, the connection piece, we've tried the hashtag WPC family worship, just to get some pictures of us all joining together and hopefully get a sense of community that way, a visual sense of community. And if you haven't yet, I would encourage you to check out the music video lessons that Beth Slaw and Adeline Beans have put together. And I think these are great because they're a continuation of something that we did in person prior to COVID-19 and isolation. And they bring the kids back to a familiar face, familiar songs, and a short little video that speaks directly to them. Right. So I think that was a really neat thing that Beth and Adeline pulled together. We're also talking about recording some of the stories from our worship training program that we started prior to our disruption. Yeah. And these are stories that are told with objects. And so they would lend themselves really nicely to a video. Okay. And my hope is that I can recruit some of the worship training volunteers to record those, providing another connection.
Yeah, great. No, that's fantastic. I've watched a couple of the singing videos with Beth and Adeline, and they've been just fantastic. They really are a great way to connect. And yeah, I'm so grateful for you and Adeline and Beth in doing that. Well, one last thing, I think it's obvious we're heading into the summer, and in our summer schedule, we offer fewer children's ministry stuff. We don't have Sunday classes during the summer. But as we begin to plan for gathered worship in the weeks ahead of us, we're very likely going to have to do things a little bit differently than what we've done in the past with children's ministries, probably starting all the way down at the nursery and working our way up. So I guess a couple of questions. How are you gearing up for that? And I know you are. This is a question that I told you I was going to ask you. But then also, how can we be praying for you as you sort of lead our children's ministry through that gearing back up phase?
Yeah, I would say that I'd covet your prayers for wisdom and discernment in sorting out what new and different ways look like for children's ministry. I think we're all agreed it's going to look different. How does that look? I'm grateful that we have a children's ministry team of different people within the church that are gathered and help me to sift through some of these ideas and bring their own knowledge and wisdom from the fields and interactions that they have. And so I would just say to pray for the children's ministry team as we look forward to finding new ways to support children's formation, faith formation here at Wheatland.
Yeah, well, Kristen, thanks so much for joining me on this conversation. We're grateful for the work that you're doing here, even in the middle of the disruption. And of course, we will be praying for you as you work with our children's ministry team to think through and plan through the weeks and months ahead for us. So thank you for joining us. And Wheatland family, we wanted to tell you that we are eager to be back together, worshiping and fellowshipping with you and your families. And I just as I close, I wanted to say that the family has always been our children's first place of worship. And so in one sense, you're not doing anything very different than what you've already been doing. But we also know that this unique time can feel heavy and disruptive, but our prayer is that even with all of the isolation and the sheltering in place that we've gone through as a church family, that through our resources that we're offering and by reaching out, this can be not just a time that everything's on pause, but that we're actually taking a step forward in our family discipleship. And that's our prayer for all of our families. For my family, I'm challenged by this, as I know all of you are as well. But Wheatland family, I love you. I'm praying for you. And I look forward to being with you again this Sunday at our live stream worship.